Hey guys, I am Ibigandscary, and I'm bringing you the final replay out of 3 games between Lexor and Fitzgen. Fitzgen is playing the red Protoss in the bottom left corner here on Entombed Valley. In the top right corner, you have Fitzgen playing the blue Terran. I don't know if you've bothered to watch the other 2 games, but they've been pretty good. Both players have been adapting and overcoming obstacles that they've noticed in the first game and the second game, and the third game undoubtedly is going to be even more epic than the last 2. I'm definitely excited about this, and you know what? You should be too. And if you're not excited, you should feel guilty for not being excited, because that's how excited you should be. Yeah. Fitzgen throwing down his first supply depot, undoubtedly to follow with the barracks, just like he's done in the last 2. Lexor bringing out his first probe, just like he did in the last 2, to get that early scout. Surprisingly, he sends it to the top right corner just immediately, knowing that in the top left, bottom right, that's just not where they're going to be. He's definitely studied this. That supply depot placed. You can tell that this is an MLG map. Barracks is down. Unfortunately, didn't complete the wall off that he was hoping for. Undoubtedly, he'll come by and drop that last supply depot. Maybe that's what this guy's going to do once he gets the minerals for it, to block the probe from escaping. He's tried to do that the last 2 games. It hasn't really succeeded. Yes, so that wall off is now tight, and this probe has nowhere left to run. Maybe he knows it, maybe he doesn't. Undoubtedly, he'll find out eventually. So that probe's in trouble. At the same time, Lexor, not really worried about a single probe loss, grabs his early assimilator and throws down that first gateway. Completely standard, totally following his build order. Entombed Valley is a pretty cool map. Got a very narrow choke, a very narrow ramp leading down to the natural expansion on the low ground. Very wide ramp leading down to the common ground, and some destructible rocks leading up to the third on the left side. It's very important to take out these rocks, even though it's possible to scoot your SCV or probe or drone over to take that third. If you don't take down those rocks, then a counterattack from the enemy is very viable and very difficult to react quickly to it. So undoubtedly, if they get to the point where they're taking out those that third expansion, then we'll see those rocks go down. Fitz is scouting all 3 bases, though it looks like that SCV didn't really scout up in that corner. Maybe he was looking for some hidden tech from the players, maybe looking for a hinted expansion before he actually goes out and scouts the natural expand by Lexor. Lexor throwing down that pylon. Cyber core already down, already ready to rock and roll. Fitzgen's grabbing his natural pretty aggressively before the bunker's down, before he has another barracks to crank out some units. However, having scouted the main, he knows that if there are any units coming, it's only going to be produced off a single gateway, and that single stalker is not going to be enough to cause him any certain amount of grief, especially with that bunker already in place. So he's going to be feeling pretty good about that natural, I'll tell you right now. Another command center going down and another barracks. You'll remember in the other games he built that command center inside the main, didn't really use it for quite some time, just morphing it into an orbital command and using those extra mules for just a little bit more minerals to build a couple more Marines. Fitz definitely favors that Marine heavy style of play. It's surprising not to see him incorporate any tanks so far, but maybe we're going to see that in this game. Maybe not. He certainly has been effective with it. However, the series is currently tied 1-1. Lexor grabbing that natural expand. He's still got a single gateway down, but he continues to crank out stalkers. Total count for the stalkers is currently 3. And you'll note that Fitz is just scanned, spotting that robo as 2 more gateways go down. You'll remember in the first game he threw down that robo without any other gateways. Quickly learned the foolishness of that, and now he's throwing down 2 gateways on top of it to supplement the amount of just units, pure units that he can create. Doesn't want to get overpowered like he did in the other games. Another barracks going down for Fitz seems to be the answer to the multiple gateways that he's spotted. He certainly is beginning to mass up a sizable amount. These 3 stalkers aren't going to be able to do enough damage. However, these 3 are definitely going to be more than a match for the 4 that's mobile. And Fitz really doesn't want to empty out the bunker just to go chase them down, just in case Lexor's got something hidden on the lower ground, or maybe something over here. Might be afraid of a pylon placed up on this high ground that they're slowly whittling down these rocks to rush in once that bunker is empty. We see Stim is starting. I wouldn't be surprised if Combat Shields is close on the heels, as we have a Twilight Council going on. You'll remember in the previous games that Lexor used to great effect the blink upgrade to his stalkers. He's definitely favoring that heavy mobility, which doesn't really incorporate well with the robotics facility with the Immortals. However, he has that Zealot Immortal combination to fall back upon. He seems very competent and confident with both styles of play, but he really needs to commit to one. With the heavy mobility that the Marines and Marauders and Medivacs is affording him, it might be more useful to him to commit to the Zealots and the Immortals and just play more of a defensive game. However, that is for him to decide. It's really more of a play style to choose and to take advantage of. That factory comes down, drops that reactor, just like in the previous games. We might see a starport come down to take advantage of that reactor, or we could see Fitz to use that reactor to create multiple Hellions like he did in the second game. 2 engineering bays go down, while at the same time the starport's just now starting. Hopefully that starport's going to use that reactor to make multiple Medivacs to support the heavy bio play that Fitz is using. You can see that charge is being researched for the Zealots, so we're going to see more Immortals, more Zealots in this. Maybe Lexor's feeling less confident about his ability to use these stalkers to great effect. Once this missile turret ends, we can see this observer go down, which is a heavy loss for Lexor. He really needs that scouting ability. He really needs to know exactly what Fitz is going to do right when he decides to do it, because once Fitz decides to move out, Lexor's going to have a very short timing to choose if he's going to do a counterattack. Maybe he's going to do heavy static defenses in the path that Fitz decides to rush him, especially if he chooses to take a third, which with these pylon places, that's definitely something Lexor's looking towards. At the same time, we have the factory moving out to make a secondary scout, while the heavy bio ball begins to take down the destructible rocks as Fitz prepares to take his own third. There we see the orbitals already lifted off and is moving off to land in that third. Lexor really doesn't want Fitz to take an economic lead, because you'll remember from the first game, Fitz got that lead and he held it with such great effect that even though Lexor did an excellent job trying to narrow down the lead that Fitz had, he wasn't capable of doing that. With the Twilight Council down, the High Templar Archive came down, and the High Templars are morphing into Archons, which with their splash damage is going to do a massive amount of damage to this bio ball that Fitz is using. However, that can be quite an expensive build, and it will be difficult for Lexor to hold on 2 base, which evidently he knows, and he's going to be working on these rocks as he prepares to take his own third, as that is already down. This factory is going to scout it very easily, and Fitz is going to know that Lexor is going to be spread thin, trying to defend 2 different bases. At the same time, since Fitz is taking down this pylon, Lexor's got to know that this third is down and that he might start looking to take it himself. Fitz is grabbing a Ghost Academy while 3 extra bunkers have gone down. So a heavy bio ball is definitely in the future. These Archons are looking more and more like a fantastic choice. Ghosts are very effective at dealing with High Templars, so Lexor is going to have to be careful on how many he chooses to field at the same time. However, those storms can be very effective, especially if you can get a large bundle of Marines and Marauders. 1-1 has finished, I believe, on the on the Protoss side of things. Let's look at the upgrades for. Yep, so both players are 1-1, definitely on even keel. We can see that the level 2 armor is started on Lexor's troops. At the same time, the Mobius reactor has started off, and maybe, just maybe, he's looking for a more airplay. Fitz is looking for maybe a more airplay, as we see 2 Vikings are being cranked out of the same reactor. Both players seem to be content right now to macro up. Fitz is pulling back with his relatively small amount of units. However, the 161 to 132 just shows you how big of a lead Fitz has, having grabbed that third a little bit faster than Lexor. We've got 4 Zealots loaded up in the Warp Gate. Warp Prism. Maybe a drop on the back side of things while this main army swings off to the third. Maybe this Warp Prism can head off to the natural while the army is distracted, get some free SCV kills. That would definitely be effective. These 2 Vikings, they might be a guarantee against potential Colossus play by Lexor. He's already seen the Warp Prisms. I'm sure he knows about the Robo that he got, that Lexor got so early last time. He's definitely fearful of a Colossus play, which would just decimate this line from behind the heavy meat shield that is afforded by the Zealots. And here we go, a major attack. Zealots charging in. Excellent storms up on the high ground. However, the defenses just keep raining in as the Zealots slowly get picked down. However, the sheer amount of Zealots is enough to pick apart this large group. All of the Archons have gone down as several feedbacks go down on the medevacs, preventing them from healing up the bio ball. Both armies are just absolutely devastated as we've got a 90 to 120 supply. The level 2 armor is just finished, just in time for the attack to pretty much be over. Unfortunately, as the 2-2 for Fitz begins to finish. 2 force fields go down on the ramp leading from the third to the second. And unfortunately, that's going to prevent these SCVs, but nope, they expire. So these SCVs succeed in running off to the relative safety of the third, while this shamble of a force is all that remains. And you can tell that Lexor's a bit on tilt right now because he really hasn't built anything in the interim, and his supply is significantly less than Fitz, being down by almost 40. Yeah, pretty much exactly 40 right now. Finally, 3 Archons are beginning to be morphed down at the third as he fears a potential counterattack, which already the SCVs have decided to take their aggression out on the 4 Zealots that remain. Succeeding in having chased the opposing army out, Fitz decides that he's in a comfortable enough position to take his 4th down in the much more exposed 4th field, which is down on the lower grounds. Basically, all Lexor has to do is head north up to the completely untested side of the top left and then swing right, and Fitz is only left with the option of building a planetary fortress to defend his investment. However, you know that a planetary fortress can't lift off. It is basically a static defense in and of itself. That limited mobility means that Fitz has to hold that if he wants to recoup that investment. 2-2 started, or no, 3-2 started the third armor and second weapons for Lexor. Army's looking definitely decent. However, the 186 to 123 supply tells you that Fitz definitely has a much stronger infrastructure in place. Finally, we're seeing ghosts on the field. Their EMPs are going to be absolutely devastating to the Archons, taking out 100 some shields in just one blast. Just doing a significant amount of damage. Those Zealots, if they're enough Zealots in the mix, they can counteract that, as they only have 50 shields to 100 health, and with their extra armor, they certainly can seem more deadly. You can see a lot of SCVs, and why Fitz has mixed them in is because he's quickly approaching max supply. He needs to get rid of some. He doesn't really need as many as he has, since he's got so many orbital commands. These Archons coming in with their splash damage are just going to eat through all those SCVs, but every shot they spend on an SCV is one shot they don't spend on the Marines, and epic storms being dropped in the back, not quite enough to deal a death blow to all the Marauders, However, quite enough to deal a death blow to the Marines. Unfortunately, they came just a moment too late as the Nexus does go down. Lexor is going to be able to clean this up. He pushes back the army, forcing Fitzgen to pick them all up and retreating for the first time in quite a while. Lexor is finally in the lead in supply, if only for a moment. Lexor grabs that fourth, taking a moment to breathe as he's finally warded off all that aggression. You'll note that with all those SCVs dead, the saturation on the third is down. The main is pretty much mined out, as is approaching the natural. And with the rapidly diminished SCV count, Fitz is going to be rapidly relying on the mules to mine for him. At the same time, you can tell by the production pad that Lexor is definitely stalled on the amount of research, the amount of techs he's decided to pursue. He seems quite content to stick with this Archon Zealot, which I have to admit has been working quite well against this Bio Ball. Fitz is quite content to remax on the Bio Ball. Maybe he's confident that once the ghosts get mixed in and he has enough energy, his EMPs are going to be enough to give him an edge on the in the battle between the two. And you can see that Fitz is back up with a supply lead of 162 to 146. Lexor doesn't seem to know that, or maybe he's confident that the small lead that he had a moment ago is enough to put some pressure back on Fitz, as they both seem to be heading into the more common ground. Fitz pulls back, having an excellent read on Lexor. Lexor's coming in on the left side of that expansion. However, with that planetary fortress right there providing artillery and a great AoE on the Zealots, even though they had an excellent surround there, they have to pull back with that planetary fortress shelling down 40 damage per shot. It is absolutely devastating to an army, and a very poor place for Lexor to have a attack. He needs to pull back, he needs to come down, he needs to choose a different angle of engagement. If he comes up this ramp, he can get that expansion, and even though that expansion is not really mining a lot of minerals right now, he still could take out an orbital. He could still pull that army out of position. He could still put pressure, and that pressure is really all he needs to do. Right now the supplies are pretty much even, and with his level 3 weapons finishing off, the gap that is currently afforded to Fitz is going to be lessened, but by forcing this engagement right on that planetary, it's a poor choice right there, because that planetary is going to be repaired by those SCVs, and it's just not going to go down, not fast enough. An excellent storm right on that Bio Ball, however, it's just not enough. The sheer amount of Terran units are dealing out a ridiculous amount of damage, and currently both units are it's just basically a slugging match right now. Whoever wants it more, whoever is capable of pouring enough resources into the constantly regenerating army. You can note that every unit here is being warped in by the warp gate. Even the Archons, they're warped in by High Templar and then morphed by Archons just immediately. So every single one of those is being regenerated by the warp gate, by this warp prism, dropping that field. So Lexor's definitely found an answer to the increased mobility by those MMMs. Excellent force field right down on top of the medevacs, right on top of that Bio Ball, and these Zealots charge in and get an excellent surround. However, Lexor's not comfortable enough to charge in and take the massive amount of damage that planetary fortress is. Lexor's baiting and baiting Fitz, and he's not quite ready to commit 100% to lose every single one of these units. Finally, he charges in, having had enough. That planetary fortress raining down fire, all the Zealots go down, and the Archons quickly follow suit, and all of a sudden these High Templars are left to get the hell out of Dodge. However, these Marines stemming are going to be able to run them down, and that every single one of those, there's so much gas. All of them fall. It's just a handful of Zealots limp back to protect the fourth. Excellent wall right here. All of these warp gates are excellently positioned to protect these photon cannons. However, you can see the 140 to 109 as this Bio Ball swings down. Fitz is going to be able to put a lot of pressure, do a lot of damage to Lexor, and Lexor really doesn't have much of an answer. This handful of Zealots aren't going to be able to do much of a surround thanks to the defensive buildings that Lexor placed himself, and these Marines are going to be able to kite him away. Unfortunately, these High Templars don't have the amulet. They don't have the ability to storm as soon as they get spawned, and Archons are fantastic, but 3 Archons against 30 Marines is just not the correct answer. Neither are Zealots with their inability to surround. This is just a poor engagement opportunity for Lexor. Fitz has definitely chosen the correct angle of engagement. This is really just the exact opposite of what Lexor was dealing with from the top, where the Planetary Fortress really negatively affected Lexor's ability to place pressure. You can see a 5th going down for Fitz, and all the just plethora of orbitals dropping mules just absolutely skyrockets Fitz' ability to create Marines and Marauders with the large amount of minerals that he's bringing in every minute. Lexor bringing down his own 5th in the bottom right corner. Unfortunately, Lexor's not capable of fielding the mules, the instant probes, basically, and he has to transfer his own over. It's a minor difference, a couple hundred minerals, I'm sure, but it's still enough that he feels it, especially whenever the game is this tight. He does have a warp prism positioned behind the mineral line. It's an obvious view of Fitz, but maybe he doesn't notice as he's spending the majority of his army down to put more pressure on that 4th. This is a much better engagement opportunity for Lex. The storms are excellent. He had several minutes, and you can just see the carnage that's left over by those storms and those Zealots charging in. This unit composition is definitely working for Lex. However, I feel strongly that some Colossus would be an excellent addition, especially because he has the robotics facility. All he needs to put down is that engineering, that support, and he'd be able to decimate the line. This warp prism finally morphing into a pylon, dropping down some Zealots. However, they're met with the majority of the force. If this harassment was done maybe a minute or two ago, whenever this large force was down, putting pressure on the 4th, then that pressure that he was doing at the 4th Lexor was doing at the 4th would have been much more effective. As things are now, Fitz sends another orbital over to his 6th, just get into position to whenever any other mineral lines are mined out completely. Lexor approaching his max 150. Still got a long way to go, but as long as he keeps producing units, eventually he'll get that deadly bio ball, and that death ball will hopefully steamroll Fitz. It just seems like he's trying to buy time, trying to max out his supply, max out his energy, so that he's got a large amount of storms that he can just storm to death this entire ball. On the other hand, Fitz is hoping to get some lucky EMPs to take out that energy from the High Templar to prevent Lexor from storming his units or feedbacking his medevacs. You can see that multiple SCVs are being sent over to create multiple orbitals, so that Fitz has a plethora again of mules. This factory having an uncontested view of a very small amount of Lexor's base as these two armies begin to flirt with each other. The ghosts being sent forward to drop some massive EMPs. You can see the lack of storms, only one storm, which was dropped more on the Zealots than anything else, and you can see absolutely no blue bars here at all. Another storm being dropped on the far right ring, but this army is just slowly being whittled to death, and as this Terran bio ball, look at that, 190 to 100. You never want to see a 2-to-1 ratio on supplies. Unfortunately, this level 2 shield upgrade just came a moment too late, as this Terran bio ball is heading down to the bottom right to deal some damage to this 5th that Lexor grabbed. Fortunately, the saturation on it is pretty mild. Even though there are some probes here, this loss, as far as things are considered, is going to be rather minor. If that massive army had decided to sweep in here with this heavier saturation and a couple more of the units there, the loss would have been more significant. As expected, this expansion does fall and this unit composition gets into position. However, Fitz takes that ramp leading up. That narrow choke will really prevent these Zealots from getting the surround that they desperately need to handle a mass of units this big. Even if they did get that perfect surround, I don't think even this amount of Zealots is enough. And you can see that gas that he needs, the gas that Lexor needs to get those gas heavy units out, like those High Templars, the Colossus, the Immortals, is just not there. And even though he's creating an impressive amount of Zealots, the pure minerals isn't enough. He needs more tech, he needs more units. Finally, 5 Stalkers coming into the mix. It's too little too late. It's not going to be enough to deal with this just sheer amount of units. You can see Fitz is streaming in units as they're taking down yet another expansion. And Lexor's really put on a back foot, 55 to 174, 3-to-1 ratio. That's pretty rough. That's pretty rough, especially considered that 2 of the expansions have gone down and that Fitz is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases. Only 5 of which are mining or mineable. But still, the just sheer amounts of bases, the sheer amount of supply, Lexor seems to be placed in an impossible situation. And he knows it. Just seems to be buying time, positioning himself so that when he decides to make his last play, he'll have the most units possible. This looks like it. The storm goes down. 2 storms well positioned. The units seem to be taking quite a bit of damage from them and from their own stem, but the sheer amount, the sheer numbers are going to crash over any army that Lexor can field. What this really came down to was Fitz was able to field a larger army and was able to get a good read on Lexor. Lexor pushed when he should have pulled back when he was trying to deal with this planetary fortress, and unfortunately that really just broke his back. It was a good game, Lexor. There's nothing to be ashamed of here. You did a phenomenal job going 37 minutes against a guy who's a whole league higher than you. Is nothing to cry about right there. That was a good game, guys. I'm happy with it. I will see you guys around.